Hey guys, I'm doing a bit of a different video today. I recently was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, and I guess this video is for anyone who maybe was diagnosed later on in life or suspects that they have ADHD or autism, or anyone who may just be interested. So I've looked up what is ADHD, and specifically inattentive. It is characterized by persistent patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And I believe that there are three strands. I'm no psychologist or doctor, so I'm just reading out basically from Google here. You can be predominantly inattentive, hyperactive, or combined. I am inattentive, which basically means I struggle with focusing and concentration and completing tasks, things like that. I basically believed I had anxiety my whole life, and I do. I have anxiety as well. But I know that ADHD is so much more in depth than I ever realized. And I think the reason that I'm doing this now is because, like I said, I thought I had anxiety. And then to be diagnosed as an adult, I'm now 28. And so to be diagnosed at a later age is quite overwhelming. It's quite weird. It's like someone suddenly goes, "Oh, this is why you're the way you are." So throughout my 20s, I basically really struggled more and more with certain things. And I used to think, what's wrong with me? That was constantly, what is wrong with me? I would also have mood swings all the time. I still do. Most of my life, I've just said, oh, it's just hormones. And yeah, probably hormones that don't help. But ADHD can cause it just issues basically in your brain. And so you can be so up and down. So the other thing that I've really noticed is that my confidence is very low. And I think a lot of people with ADHD really internalize their thoughts. I didn't realize this. We spend a lot of our time copying other people and learning how to be sort of normal. And so you mask a lot of my life anyway. And that was why I went for the diagnosis, because I thought I'm starting to unmask, and then you start questioning who you are. That was a really big thing. Something else, I'm kind of just doing this in a random order, but I'll remember things as and when. I'm trying to make a list of I'm gonna make a list. I'm gonna make a little list. What do you mean I prepared? I didn't prepare for any of this. Okay. I went to counselling last year, and I found a really lovely therapist. She is honestly everything that I need for many reasons. One, she has ADHD. She was diagnosed later on in life. I didn't really think much of it. I remember thinking, oh, that's cool, because I thought I might have it. But then we talked about other stuff for months and months and months. And it wasn't until the end of the year that I realized I'm going to go for it. And I got the diagnosis. So when I went back to her in January, literally this month, I was really scared. I was really scared that she was going to go, yeah, sure. Again, firstly, that would be a very bad therapist. Secondly, it shows what I fear people like, how I think people will react and how I don't want them to react like that. The first thing she said was, "Have you accepted that diagnosis?" I didn't believe I could have ADHD. And this goes back to the whole self-worth thing. I think the big thing was that, for example, you blurt things out when you shouldn't. You say things before you think. And so you'd often get reactions and think, "Oh, I shouldn't have said that." We overshare all the time, right? And so because of that and many other reasons, I think I basically just thought, well, I won't talk at all. And that's where I became quite shy, quite what's the word? Reserved, maybe that's the word. I was very reserved. I was a very quiet kid. My teachers were like, "Oh, you should speak up more." And I realized that over time, it was a kind of coping mechanism to just be like, "Well, I won't talk." And I still do it. Like in work, I never speak up. I ain't doing that. And in doing that, I have slowly taught myself that I don't matter, or that my voice doesn't need to be heard, or that what I think or say isn't needed, it's not important. And so when the suggestion of ADHD came up through multiple streams, talking to friends, talking to family, seeing it online, seeing TikToks, I was thinking, well, everyone who has ADHD is loud, is vibrant, is, like bubbly, bouncing off the walls. And I thought, well, I'm not that. That's what I believed. And so anyway, once I got my diagnosis, it was a huge thing of, oh my God, okay. And then you realize in the past all these things that start adding up as to how it makes sense now. What? I don't really speak very well. I say random words in a certain order and hope for the best a lot of the time. Speaking to my therapist, as I said, first thing was, have you accepted it? And the second thing with her was that she, like me, is not an obvious person with ADHD. And so for me, it was so reassuring to know that we have a very similar experience. And one of the big things was removing that mask. And I think part of me is scared that, one, there's no difference if I take off the mask. Because if I believe that I am boring, I'm scared, I guess, of taking off a mask and I'm still boring. I need to really work that out with myself and figure out who I am. It's really hard to believe in yourself when you don't believe in yourself. This is not a sob story. I'm absolutely fine. I have a great life, actually. I'm actually very happy. But it does get to you. I'm going to run through my letter. So basically, what happened was I went through my GP and I said, I believe I've got ADHD. They were like, cool, I will refer you They then sent me a right to choose website, which has a list of all of the available clinics. And so I chose one that was online. I think most of them are online, and I was fine with that. They're also mostly in London, and I am no longer in London. I then called my GP and said, I want that one. I want that one. They were like, cool, we've done it. They'll be in touch. And they were. They were like, here you go. We've booked in a assessment A. And I was like, cool, okay, that's very quick. So you have an assessment A. I don't know if this is the exact same for every single clinic, but I think it is. So the assessment A, they go through all of the questions with you. So this one was very specific. It has drop downs. So it'll say struggling with a task, and it give you all of these options that you can tick. I think you can then be referred on to assessment B. Assessment B was a lot more in depth. The other thing with this assessment B was that a form is sent to a trusted person, basically. I sent this to Dom originally, but it turns out it's a lot more about your childhood. So I was like, my mum. Hi, mum. Could you do this for me? A lot of the questions were about development, which I didn't really struggle with. I didn't struggle with that. So we've put here, this is good because I've forgotten what I said. They've written down basically what I said. So a lot of it is in speech marks. So long-standing difficulties with timekeeping. Huge one. That is the biggest thing with me. I really don't like time. I'm always late. If I say any time to my family, like, oh, I'll be there in 10 minutes, it will not be 10 minutes. Describing a 5-minute task, often taking 40 minutes. I will literally say, all right, I'll do this. I'll be really quick. And an hour later, I'm still doing that bloody task. So I am very grateful that I live with a lovely, clean husband. I like at work, I work with a lot of women, and I used to feel so awkward because they'd all be like, "Oh my god, my husband is so messy. My god, oh, he leaves stuff everywhere. He's just messy." And I was just there like, "Mhm." Because he is the clean one and I am the messy one. I feel really bad. You will tidy a whole area. I'm like, "Oh my god, that was so good." And then Dom will be like, "Meg, why is there such a big mess?" And I'll look and it'll be like messy again. I'm like, "What? I swear I just tidied that." Or I will again tidy one area and mess up another. And I really struggle basically with just keeping stuff tidy. They've put experiences persistent racing thoughts, stating her mind is never once quiet. Initially attributed these symptoms to anxiety. There's a little bit about work here, but I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble with my work. Let's say they do watch this. The other one I have is basically forgetting tasks. So I will usually just set reminders constantly on my phone. Reports getting overwhelmed and irritable very quickly if I have more than one thing to do. It's like instant, oh my god, I can't do that. Do not even approach me. Like, I'm so stressed. Also reports a tendency to talk excessively and overshare personal information. So again, what I was saying earlier, apparently it's very common to overshare. Like, I've talked to my colleagues about every detail of like periods. I'm like, they don't want to know that. Especially like people who I can tell don't want to talk about that. I will still do it. I go home and then I'm like, oh my god, why did I say that? So it says here in the developmental history section, she was often described as thoughtful and kind, but is this in nursery? Yeah, in nursery was thoughtful and kind, but often in her own little world. She followed instructions but could get confused due to daydreaming. There was another thing I mentioned to the guy, which was homework. This was like in primary school specifically. I used to get so upset and worried about what was wrong with me. One class, I don't know why, it got into the habit of, where's your homework? And I would be like, oh. And I'd look in my bag and it wasn't there. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I did it. I swear I did it. And the next week, exactly the same. And I'm not kidding, this was like 10 times now. And I think my mum got called in. I was a good student, so she wasn't, oh, she's obviously just not doing her homework. And I felt terrible because I remember everyone putting their bloody homework in. And I just would like, I'd be like, no, miss, I swear I did it. Like, I was like, look, I can tell you the answers. Zoning out as a child was a huge thing. I used to worry. My mum actually thought it was epilepsy. I used to do that all the time, and I used to be in class. Again, this was very much in primary school. I think because secondary school there was a lot more going on. But anyway, in primary school, I used to, I'd be listening, and then I'd just be literally like, time would go click, and then I'd be like, where am I? And he'd be still talking, and I'd be like, where are we? And I'd get really, really lost. And I used to think, okay, focus, focus, focus. So yeah, I really struggled with zoning out. And again, it might have been like 3 seconds, but it felt like I just was not there. It's like I just suddenly was like, "Oh my god, where am I?" So yeah, there was a lot of times I guess in primary school that was more obvious than I realised. She described herself as a very sensitive child who disliked loud noises or people shouting. I remember going to firework nights and having to stand inside with my mum. Like the rest of my family were all outside enjoying them, and I'd be inside because I hated them. Yeah, I put trying to fit in and comparing herself to others. That was a huge thing in secondary school where I kind of thought what's wrong with me a lot of the time. I found the social aspect really hard, and I think I found my group and I just kind of stayed there. I think that was very much at the height of me telling myself I was quite boring, and so I think I spent a lot of my time going, "Why am I in a friendship group? They must like me for some reason." But yeah, having this ADHD diagnosis is a huge thing, because I can actually understand my brain a bit more now. So yeah, this has basically just been a big ramble about my diagnosis. And again, anyone who maybe thinks that they might have it, please go get tested. Much easier process than it has been in the past. And yeah, just to anyone else who may be struggling with, I guess, being diagnosed later on and figuring out who they are, having masks and not knowing maybe what's wrong with you, which is what I always told myself. I am very grateful to have a very good therapist who knows exactly about ADHD because she has it herself. If you can relate, then great. That's what I was trying to do. Thank you for watching this ramble, and I'm very sorry for rambling so much. I don't know if any of it made sense, but I did it anyway. Bye. The other thing that I've really realized is my hmm, what I realize ironic. And she has oh my god, what's wrong with me?